One of my favourite movies of all time is Nick Rogue's film Insignificance, in which a number of 20th century gods and goddesses, namely the sports hero Joe DiMaggio, the sex goddess Marilyn Monroe, the most politically powerful man in America in that era, Joseph McCarthy, and the most godlike scientific genius of his day, Albert Einstein, all meet in a single hotel. It examines in the film which of us is truly significant. What is significance? And there is a glorious moment in the film where the lift operative in the hotel, a Cheyenne Indian, is talking to Einstein and identifies Einstein as a Cheyenne. Einstein is obviously nonplussed by this until the Indian explains that he has heard that Einstein has stated that any individual, wherever they are situated, is exactly at the centre of the universe, with infinity stretching on all sides of them. And he explains that this is a Cheyenne belief, that this is not just a concept that has been arrived at by a nuclear physicist. This is a basic idea that goes back to our Aboriginal origins, that each of us, wherever we are, is at the centre of the universe. This was very relevant to me because, in a way, this is how I've always felt. I've felt that, for me, Northampton is the centre of the universe. I'm aware that for everybody else, other locations will have as much centrality. But for my part, starting out from the notion that, yes, Northampton is the centre of the universe because it is, by and large, my universe. I travel very little. I have never lived anywhere else other than Northampton. Consequently, this is my microcosm. The entire of the human world seems to me to boil down to these streets, to this history, these anecdotes. And basically, the way that the universe seems to behave is that if you start out with a premise, then the harder you look, the more evidence that you will find to demonstrate the validity of that premise. The more I looked at Northampton, the more it seemed that Northampton actually was the centre of the universe, and that everything of any importance had originated from this point. About a quarter of a mile from where I'm sitting now, there is the United Reformed Church on Abington Avenue in Northampton. This, I believe, was where Francis Harry Compton Crick, the co-discoverer of the DNA molecule, went to Sunday school, evidently so impressed by stories of a 7-day creation and by seeing all things bright and beautiful and talking about the Lord God that made them all, that he went on to discover a mechanism that actually made all of that conceptual baggage completely redundant and irrelevant. DNA, therefore, spirals out from one inconsequential side street in Northampton. Parliamentary democracy was more or less invented in Northampton at the Battle of Naseby, which was the deciding battle in the Civil War, which brought parliamentary democracy to this country and which has been much imitated since throughout the rest of the world with varying degrees of success. America seems to have its origins in Northamptonshire. George Washington's grandparents lived at Barton Salgrave. Benjamin Franklin's great-grandparents lived at Ecton, both of these villages within Northamptonshire. In fact, the village crest of Barton Salgrave is bars and mullets, or stars and stripes, as we would refer to them now. And it would seem that, quite probably, the American flag is an adaptation of a simple, obscure Northampton village crest. You tend to find that most significant history that has happened in the British Isles has generally reached its climax in and around Northampton. The War of the Roses was decided here and concluded here. The list of local legends, the list of characters, the extraordinary roster of dead queens that we have associated with this town, whether that's Eleanor of Aquitaine, whose funeral procession placed the coffin down upon the ground while resting at 2 points while crossing Northamptonshire, where the magnificent Eleanor crosses sprung up, similar to the one in Charing Cross in London, although I think personally that ours are better. Mary Queen of Scots beheaded here. As far as I know, to the best of my knowledge, Queen Boadicea, after probably taking poison before the final battle with the Romans at Battlebridge Road near King's Cross in London, would probably have been transported back to the ancient centre of ancient British culture, which was Northampton. And I understand that they have indeed found the burial mound of a seemingly very important Iron Age queen somewhere out near Silverstone. And of course, most recently, we've had the Queen of Hearts returned to Northampton for burial. There seems to be some vector that is part of Northampton's makeup that revolves around these dead legendary women. There are other motifs that seem to crop up almost as regularly. Injured legs, severed heads, black dogs, fires. These things tend to run through all of the stories of the town. People who grow up here absorb these stories by a process of osmosis. You'll have some knowledgeable uncle who knows a little about local history. He'll tell you about the time that a Allied bomber crashed in Gold Street in the centre of town. He'll tell you it because maybe he saw it go down. They'll tell you about secret rooms under the streets, sort of odd little speakeasies that are now buried under the floor of a town centre bakery. Strange little forgotten spaces that you inhabit them with your imagination, even if you never see them, never set foot in them. You know that they're there. The tunnels that run under the town that have been there for hundreds of years. This crisscrossing of catacomb passageways beneath the town's market square, allegedly linking up all of its important buildings and churches. Although the majority of people will never see these places or know them as anything other than anecdotes passed down from a grandparent, they make up part of the mind space of the town. The fact that these places, although unseen, exist. The fact that these historical personalities, although no longer amongst us, did once pass through here. These all add to the unique energy of the town that you absorb. And obviously, in the case of a writer or an artist or a musician, they must inevitably form a huge part of what eventually emerges on to paper or canvas or magnetic tape, in some way the resonance of the town, a collage of all of these different influences and vectors, is vibrating in everybody who has been brought up, has grown up within that sphere of influence. Inevitably, the work of any artist that has grown up in a particular location is going to be full of the ancient resonances of that particular spot.